I'm Rachel Myers. I'm 29. And 3 months ago, during what should have been just another family dinner in my parents' Indiana home, my dad passed me a plate of cornbread and asked, "Has the extra cushion helped at all?" I blinked. What cushion? My fingers froze halfway to the gravy ladle. My mom's hand trembled around her wine glass. And in that pause, that one strange moment, I felt something shift beneath the floorboards of my carefully constructed life. Before I can continue my story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The thing about growing up in the Myers household was that everything always looked just right. Our brick ranch home had freshly painted shutters and flower beds my mom planted by hand every spring. We smiled in every church bulletin photo. We brought pies to potlucks. We took family vacations every other summer, even if it meant putting them on credit. If something broke, we didn't talk about it. We replaced it or polished it until it didn't show. That was the rule. So when Dad asked that question about the money, I knew something was wrong. The air shifted. You know that weird moment before a storm breaks, where the sky turns that eerie pale gray and everything goes quiet? It was like that. Dad Mark Myers was never the type to ask things lightly. He runs a roofing company and thinks emotions are like drywall. They only get messy if you poke holes in them. So the fact that he said it out loud, that meant he assumed I knew what he was talking about. But I didn't. I glanced at Aaron, my brother, who suddenly looked very focused on his meatloaf. His wife, Emily, was buttering her roll like it was a stress ball. And Mom tried to pass it off as a misunderstanding. "Oh, just the care package," she said too quickly. "The one with the granola and socks you like." Only I hadn't gotten any socks. The thing about lies is they don't echo the same way as truth. Truth sits calmly in a room. Lies rattle. And that night, every word they spoke started to rattle in my bones. The plates were too nice for a basic family dinner. The pie in the fridge was banana cream my favorite, but I hadn't told anyone that in years. There were too many coincidences, too many knowing glances. That was the moment the house I thought was built on love started showing cracks. And beneath the paint, the landscaping, the Instagrammable holiday photos, there was a quiet rot. Secrets. Ones they'd kept from me. Ones I'd been too proud or too afraid to ask about. And if I'm being honest, I already knew what the question meant. Deep down, some part of me had always suspected. But I'd spent so long pretending everything was okay, I didn't dare admit I'd needed help. My fork scraped my plate as I cleared my throat. What cushion, Dad? And with that one question, dinner stopped being dinner. It became the scene of a slow-motion collapse. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just a sharp, slow unspooling of everything we'd all kept quiet about for years. I wish I could say the unraveling started that night, that Dad's question was the beginning. But that would be a lie, and if this story has taught me anything, it's that lies, even soft, quiet ones, cost too much. No, the unraveling began months earlier back in Chicago, inside a sleek downtown office with floor-to-ceiling windows and standing desks, the kind of place where people wore Patagonia vests over button-downs and discussed stock performance like weather. I'd worked there for almost 5 years, managing mid-level financial portfolios for mid-level clients who thought they were high net worth. I was good at it, efficient, reliable, polished. My performance reviews glowed. But when the hedge fund restructured to lean into AI, human advisors became overhead. 30% of the department gone overnight. I remember staring at the HR manager's mouth as she said the words, nodding like I understood, even though my ears were ringing too loud to hear. The timing was pure garbage. I'd just upgraded my lease, signed for a new Corolla, and splurged on a dress I planned to wear to a finance networking gala. I told myself the layoff was temporary, a blip. I had savings, after all. Savings. God, what a beautiful word that stops meaning anything once rent Cobra groceries and bills start stripping it down to bones. But I couldn't let anyone know. Not my friends, not my parents, and definitely not Aaron. My entire identity, my pride, was built on getting out, on making it on my own. The golden child may have stayed in Indiana, but I had escaped. I wasn't about to crawl back with a broken resume and a bruised ego, so I lied. On our weekly calls, I said, "Yeah, the transition's going well." When Mom asked if I'd finally bought that new coat, I said, "Not yet, just being picky." When Dad teased about my city girl life, I laughed, because if I stopped laughing, I might cry. And I was afraid if I cried, I wouldn't stop. I started cutting back. Sublet the nice apartment. Moved into a one-bedroom studio above a bakery that smelled amazing at dawn and like burnt sugar by night. The radiators hissed constantly. My neighbor practiced trumpet at odd hours. The ceiling had a crack that looked like the Chicago River. I sold my car. Walked or took the bus. Switched my oat milk lattes for instant coffee and reused tea bags. My skin broke out from stress, and my diet regressed to what I ate in college cereal toast, whatever was 2 for 1. Still, I clung to the image, kept posting inspirational quotes on LinkedIn, kept dressing up for Zoom calls that weren't real. I told myself, "You've got this." Until one morning, I woke up and couldn't see straight. My first migraine. It floored me. I lay curled up for 16 hours, light stabbing through the blinds like knives. I had no health insurance. The urgent care visit, the meds, they were luxuries. But I had no choice. I had to function, had to keep faking it. And then just when I thought the dam might break, a deposit appeared in my account. With $500, no memo, no explanation, just there. I stared at it for an hour, refreshed my app, looked at my old payroll provider, maybe a delayed bonus, a tax adjustment. I didn't ask. I used it. That was the first month. Then it happened again, and I let myself believe what I needed to, until my father passed me cornbread and casually shattered the only illusion I had left. There's something surreal about realizing your life has gotten so small, it fits in one room. My new apartment in Southside Chicago didn't have walls so much as zones, one for sleeping, one for cooking, and one for panicking quietly at 3 a.m. The windows rattled every time the elevated train groaned by. The heating system sounded like it was struggling to breathe. My neighbor's toddler screamed like clockwork at midnight, and the ceiling tiles bowed like they were one hard rain away from collapsing. But it was mine, and more importantly, it was cheap. I furnished it with mismatched chairs from a Facebook group, a particle board table that came with the screws already stripped, and one decent lamp I'd carried through 3 moves. My mattress sat on the floor. My sofa was a futon with a squeaky middle. This apartment heard things my family never did. It heard me sob through rejection emails. It heard the crack in my voice when I rehearsed how I'd explain the employment gap in interviews. It heard me scream into my pillow when the headache meds stopped working and I was too broke to refill them. And every first of the month, like clockwork, the deposit appeared. $500. No sender ID. No confirmation email. Just a credit floating like a lifeline in a storm. I told myself it had to be from that side consulting project I did back in January. They were behind on payments. Maybe they were spreading it out. But deep down I knew. I just didn't want to know. Because if I admitted that the money wasn't some divine fluke, then I'd have to ask myself why someone was helping me. And if someone was helping me, that meant someone knew. It meant my secret wasn't safe. So I built new routines. Wake up, ice pack, instant coffee, ramen for lunch. Apply to 5 jobs a day. Try not to open Instagram. Text back just enough to seem alive. And when Mom called, I sat on the edge of the bed, because the signal was strongest there, and told her everything was fine. She asked if I was eating. I said of course. She asked how work was. I said busy. She asked if I was still dating that guy Nate. I said we're keeping it casual. We hadn't spoken in 2 months. The lie grew roots. It flowered into believable details. I even invented a fake client, once Lakeside Logistics, and gave them a whole backstory just to fill silence during a family call. Because nothing terrified me more than the thought of my mother hearing the crack in my voice, of her saying, "Come home," of giving up and becoming the version of me they feared I'd become when I left Indiana. Pride is a strange thing. It made me feel powerful, and then it made me lonely. And yet, in those small dark hours, I'd open my banking app and see that quiet little miracle of a deposit. And every month I told myself this is the last time. I'd get back on my feet. I'd fix it. They'd never have to know. But they already did. I just hadn't realized that yet. By the time we sat down to dinner at my parents' house in Carmel, Indiana, I'd built a fortress around myself. brick by emotional brick, layered with curated updates, and just enough sarcasm to deflect any real questions. But that night, the one with the cornbread and the grave, mistake something was off from the start. First the china, not the everyday plates, not even the guests are coming set. The real stuff. The cream and gold heirlooms I remembered only seeing at Thanksgiving, or maybe Easter if Grandma was still around. Second the pie. Banana cream. My favorite. Except I hadn't told anyone that since high school, and my mom had this thing where she never remembered food preferences unless she was trying to make a point. And third, Aaron and Emily. When I walked in, they were already there. Aaron hugged me a little too long. Emily asked about my apartment with this weird mixture of curiosity and pity. They didn't press, but their questions felt loaded, like they already knew the answers and were just waiting for me to lie. I chalked it up to pregnancy hormones. Emily was in her second trimester, and everything she did lately seemed softer, rounder, more sentimental. Now I know it wasn't hormones, it was guilt. It's funny how hindsight strips the varnish off moments. How you can look back and see the signs with excruciating clarity. Like how Mom kept rearranging the appetizer tray and flinching at every clang of a utensil. Or how Dad cleared his throat 3 times before finally asking about real estate prices in Chicago, a city he's never even liked. They were dancing around something. I just didn't know it was me. The tension spiked when I declined help for my cousin Jenna's wedding. Flights to San Diego are insane right now, I mumbled. Work's just hectic, which was a lie. The kind that tasted bitter going down. Mom offered to help with airfare. Dad casually mentioned it could be an early Christmas gift. I snapped back. I can handle it. Then came the mashed potatoes. And Dad's question, has the extra cushion helped at all? It landed like a dropped wine glass. You don't expect it. You just hear the shatter. Silence stretched. Mom's face went pale. Aaron reached for Emily's hand under the table. No one would meet my eyes. What money, I asked. And then the unraveling began. Mom's excuse was weaksome nonsense about granola and socks. Dad looked like someone had just kicked his dog. Karen, he said, his voice a warning. Aaron cut his roast into tiny pieces like he was performing surgery. Megan, no, Emily kept staring at the butter dish. That's when it hit me. They all knew, not just about the money. About me, my job, the layoff, the apartment. The truth I had tried so hard to bury under LinkedIn updates and fake laughter. My family had been orbiting around my secret, like satellites, around a dying star, pretending not to see the implosion. And suddenly, the distance between us felt unbearable. I need to talk to Mom, I said, standing up. The room didn't argue, because they knew. They'd always known, and I was the last one to find out. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and egg custard. The pie sat cooling on the counter, pristine under a dome of plastic wrap Mom's silent offering already ignored. She didn't look up when I walked in, just kept fussing with dessert plates that were already aligned with military precision. Her fingers shook. Her lips moved like she was rehearsing something. Not a prayer, a defense. Mom, I said, trying to steady my voice. She flinched. The pie needs a few more minutes. It's cold. She didn't answer. I moved closer. Look at me. Finally, she turned. Her eyes were rimmed red, and her voice was all brittle porcelain. I didn't want you to feel embarrassed. What money, I asked again, each word like a stone dropped between us. That's when Dad came in. He didn't thunder. He didn't scold. He just stood beside me, arms crossed over his flannel shirt, jaw clenched like a vice. Karen, he said softly, tell her. Mom sat down like her bones had suddenly remembered gravity. Her hands went straight to her apron, hem twisting the fabric in knots. $2,000 a month, she whispered. Since March. I blinked. That couldn't be right. She nodded like I'd asked. And a little extra in July for your birthday. Dad inhaled so sharply I thought he might faint. Where did it come from? I asked, my voice cracking. Mom didn't answer right away. Just looked past me like she couldn't bear to watch the moment land. Then I sold Grandma Joyce's jewelry. I staggered back. The antique pearls. The vintage gold engagement ring. The charm bracelet she said I'd wear on my wedding day. Gone. Liquidated without ceremony to fund my silent survival. You did what Dad's voice was louder now, breaking against the cupboards. You weren't supposed to find out, she said. And for a second, she actually sounded wounded by our knowing. Dad sat heavily at the table, the air wheezing out of him. You made this decision without me. You've made plenty without me. She shot back, something sharp flashing through the guilt. The second mortgage, the unpaid bills, the temporary credit cards. I froze. Wait, what? Dad went still. A different kind of silence this time. Oh, don't act surprised. Mom continued, the dam, now thoroughly cracked. You've been lying too, Mark. We just lie about different things. Aaron appeared in the doorway, like a summoned ghost. She knew, he said quietly. She saw Rachel coming out of the unemployment office when she was in Chicago for Jenna's bridal shower. Mom confirmed it with a slow nod. I panicked. So you lied, I said, numb. I helped, she corrected. You wouldn't have taken it if I'd asked. You didn't give me the chance. We were shouting now. The pie sat behind us like a joke, perfect untouched, and completely irrelevant. You all lied, I said, chest heaving. And you stood around pretending I was fine, letting me choke on my pride, while secretly wiring me life support like I was a damn charity case. We're your family, Mom said softly, tears finally sliding down her cheeks. I couldn't watch you suffer. But you could watch me fake it, I said. Watch me disintegrate while you sent blood money from dead heirlooms and hoped I wouldn't notice. Nobody spoke. Nobody could. Secrets taste like banana cream pie. Too sweet, too soft, and suddenly you're choking on it. The kitchen held its breath. For a second, I thought I might throw up. Not from the yelling, not even from the truth, but from the sheer exhaustion of it all. Of holding everything in, of pretending to be okay. And now, finding out that everyone else had been pretending too. I didn't know, Dad said, still stunned. I had no idea about the money. No, Mom cut in, her voice low and bitter. You didn't. Just like I didn't know about the second mortgage. What second mortgage, I asked, again louder this time. Dad rubbed his forehead like he could wipe away the question. It was temporary. A cash flow issue at the company. Roofing slowed down last year. Materials got expensive. Labor costs jumped. We had to float payroll a few times. It's handled now, Mom scoffed. Handled. You think borrowing against the house is handling it? I didn't want to worry you, he said flatly. I laughed sharp and mean. So let's tally it up. Mom sold Grandma's jewelry to bail me out without telling anyone. You mortgaged the house to keep your business alive without telling Mom. I lost my job and pretended everything was fine. Anyone else want to chime in? Aaron stepped forward, his arms folded. Mom asked me for help with the deposits last month. She ran out of things to sell. I turned to him. You too! I told her it wasn't right, he said, eyes on the floor. But I sent money anyway. I couldn't just watch you fall apart. But you did, I shot back. You all did. You just watched from behind the curtain like it was some play you couldn't afford to interrupt. I was trying to protect you, Mom said, voice cracking. No, I replied. You were protecting yourself from seeing me fail, from having to look me in the eyes and say, "Are you okay?" Because you knew I wasn't. And you didn't want to hear the answer. Silence. Dad stood up, slowly walked to the counter, and looked at the pie like it could offer a solution. Maybe we all screwed this up, he muttered. We're not good at talking, never have been. Talking, I snapped. Dad, this isn't a communication workshop. This is our lives. You kept a mortgage secret from your wife. She sold family heirlooms and wired money behind your back. I've been living on ramen and shame and Advil for 3 months while smiling through job interviews I knew I couldn't take. I didn't want you to think I'd failed, he said quietly, and for the first time he looked small. Not weak, just human. And I got it, because that was the same reason I hadn't told anyone either. Because in this family, failure was a private affair. You suffered quietly, fixed what you could, and emerged smiling. Like a good Midwesterner, like a good Myers. Except none of us were okay, not really. And pretending had only made it worse. I check my bank account every day, I said. And every time I saw that money, I felt relief, but also guilt. Because I knew something wasn't right. And I didn't want to ask. Because I didn't want to know how broken we really were. Mom reached out, then paused. And I let her pause. I couldn't be touched. Not yet. Dad cleared his throat. I think we should all sit down. No, I said. Not until everyone tells the truth. We migrated back into the dining room, each of us moving like ghosts in our own home. The food was cold. The roast had gone gray at the edges, and the mashed potatoes were starting to crust. No one touched a thing. We sat at that heavy oak table, like it was a confession booth. I think Dad started, we all need to put our cards on the table. And just like that, the silence bloomed again. Wide, thick. But this time it didn't last long. Aaron finally snapped. "You want truth," he said, his fork clattering down. "Fine, here's mine. I've resented this family for years." My eyebrows shot up. "What?" "You've always been Mom's favorite," he said, not cruel, just exhausted. "When you moved to Chicago, instead of joining the company, she called it independent. When I stayed to help Dad, she called it predictable. When I needed help with a down payment, you gave me a loan, Mom, with a repayment schedule and interest. You sold Grandma's heirlooms for Rachel and didn't tell anyone." Mom's mouth parted like she wanted to protest, but no words came out. "I never asked for special treatment," I said, stunned. "You didn't have to," he replied. "You already had it." I stared at him, trying to find the malice. But it wasn't there, just hurt. Old moldy hurt that had been quietly molding in the basement of our relationship for years. Dad exhaled hard. "Your mother's always worried more about Rachel." "Oh my God," I whispered. "It's not favoritism," Mom said quickly, eyes darting between us. "It's fear. Rachel was always so stubborn, so determined to do things her way. I didn't want to lose her. And I was just the safe one," Aaron said. "The backup plan, the guy who stayed behind." "Because we needed you," Dad said. "And you were reliable." "That's not the compliment you think it is," Aaron muttered. Emily put a hand on his arm. "It's okay," she said. "Say it." Sometimes, he continued, I feel like I don't get to have problems. Because I'm the one who stayed, who didn't chase dreams in big cities. I just worked. I built a life right here. And somehow that became invisible. My throat tightened. I didn't know. "Of course you didn't," he said. "Because I didn't tell you. Because in this family we don't say what we really feel. We just pretend. Until the house is on fire." We all sat there, letting the sparks crackle in the air. Nobody moved. Aaron leaned back. "You know what really pisses me off? I knew what Mom was doing was wrong. I knew. But I still wired the money. Because I figured, what's one more secret? We're all drowning in them anyway." I swallowed hard, guilt rising. I was so caught up in surviving, I never even stopped to think what that survival cost everyone else. "We're a family of martyrs," Aaron said. "You suffer in silence. Mom sacrifices in silence. Dad hides in silence. And I clean up the silence." It was the most honest thing he'd ever said. And it cut me open in a way I hadn't expected. Not all wounds are visible. Some wear polo shirts and mow the lawn on Sundays. Some look like your older brother, silently breaking apart in front of a plate of cold pot roast. The weight in the room didn't lift. It thickened. No one said a word for what felt like a full minute. Just the soft hum of the fridge and the slow, rhythmic ticking of the clock above the china cabinet. Time passing, like it had somewhere more important to be. Emily, who'd been quiet for most of the night, finally spoke. I think she said gently, "You all need help talking to each other." Everyone turned to her. She wasn't accusing, just stating a truth so plainly it was impossible to dodge. "We've been in couples therapy for 6 months, she added, squeezing Aaron's hand. "Not because we're broken, but because we want to learn how to be honest before it's too late." Mom blinked surprised. "You never said," "Because it always feels like there's no space," Emily replied. "Like everything has to be perfect when we come here. Even the air feels polished." That stung. Because it was true. The whole house was built on presentation. My childhood was a parade of appearances, Christmas cards, birthday brunches, church bake sales, all of it immaculate. I never saw my parents fight. Never heard the word anxiety until I was in college. Emotions were meant to be folded and tucked away like spare linens. "I didn't want to bring my problems home," I murmured. Dad looked at me. "I didn't know you were having migraines. I didn't know you mortgaged the house." He nodded slowly. "I didn't know you felt second best," I said to Aaron. "And I didn't know you were hanging on by a thread," he replied. Mom sniffled. "When I was a kid, my dad lost his job. We kept going to Pizza Hut, buying school clothes, acting like nothing had changed. Then, one day, the bank took our house. I never saw it coming. That kind of betrayal, it sticks. I swore I'd never let my family go through that kind of surprise." "So you created a different kind of betrayal," I said. "The kind where we're all pretending not to be drowning, even though we're soaked." She winced. "I thought if I controlled it, it wouldn't hurt." "But it still did," I said. "It still does." Dad's eyes were glassy. He wiped his mouth with a napkin he hadn't used all dinner. My father died of cancer. We didn't even know he was sick until he collapsed at work. That was how I learned what a provider does. You show up, you don't complain, you fix it. Quietly. That legacy ends here, Emily said softly. She wasn't trying to steal the show. She was handing us a flashlight in a very dark basement. What do we do? Aaron asked, voice hoarse. We try something different, I said. We stop making honesty a last resort. Family therapy, Mom offered, eyes flickering between all of us. Dad grunted, but to his credit didn't object. I'd go, I said. Me too, Aaron added. There it was. A crack in the armor. Not a collapse, but an opening. For the first time, we weren't stepping around the truth. We were looking right at it. Together. The days after that dinner felt like tiptoeing across a minefield, except we were finally calling out where the mines were instead of pretending the ground was safe. We didn't have a family meeting or dramatic intervention. There were no violins, no tears over candlelight. It started with a group text. Emily sent it. Emily Myers, 9:42 a.m. Monday. Hey, found a family therapist who does evening sessions. They take Zoom. First one's free. Just saying. No one responded for an hour. Then Dad of all people gave it a thumbs up. That's how I knew we had a shot. We booked our first session with Dr. Alan Parker the following week. He had a calm voice, wore flannel, even over video, and said things like, families operate on emotional muscle memory. Let's see what yours keeps defaulting to. We laughed, nervously, but we stayed. The first session was awkward. No one wanted to go first. But Dr. Parker asked us each to say one sentence we'd never said out loud before. Mine was, I thought if I failed, I'd lose you all. Mom's was, I thought if I didn't fix everything, I wasn't worth anything. Dad's, I didn't know how to be vulnerable without feeling weak. Aaron's, I thought staying close meant being forgotten. It cracked something open. Not shattered, just gently split. Enough for air to finally get in. From there, we started building new habits. One honest thing at a time. We created a weekly call where everyone had to say one thing they were struggling with. Just one. No advice unless asked. No fixing, just space. Dad shared that he was considering selling the roofing business, that the stress was eating him alive and retirement didn't sound like surrender anymore. It sounded like relief. Mom admitted she wanted to go back to teaching part-time. Not for money, for herself. Aaron confessed that fatherhood terrified him, that he sometimes dreamed about leaving Indiana and starting over somewhere no one knew him. And I told them I'd been offered a job. A modest one. A budgeting analyst role at a logistics company in Indianapolis. The pay wasn't glamorous, but the work was stable, and the apartment I found was quiet with real walls and working heat. I want to come home, I said, voice shaking. Not to your house, but nearby, close, and real. No one cried. But Aaron gave a little nod, like a peace treaty had just been signed. Dad called me the next morning. Not to lecture, just to say I'm proud of you. I kept the family support fund Mom started, but changed its name in my bank app, Myers Mutual Aid. I added my own contributions once I started working again. Aaron offered too as well. It's not a slush fund, it's a promise. That if any of us stumble again, we'll say so, and we'll help. With consent, not secrets. We still mess up. Last week, Mom offered to buy me a new winter coat and slipped a $100 bill into my glove compartment. I returned it with a note. You can help, but I get to decide how. That's our new rule. Support doesn't sneak. It stands beside you and asks, do you want me here? And for the first time in years, my answer was yes. 3 months after the dinner that detonated our family's delicate fiction, we sat around the same dining room table again. Same oak wood, same china. Yes, Mom brought it out. The cream and gold set. But this time, it wasn't for show. It was for us. For what we'd earned. The food was warm. The conversations warmer. Dad didn't clear his throat nervously. Mom didn't flinch at every silence. Aaron joked more. Emily glowed her belly round now with 8 months of new life. Me, I brought dessert. A banana cream pie I made myself crust a little crooked, but mine. I set it on the table like a peace offering. I can't promise it'll be as good as yours, I told Mom. She smiled. That's not the point. And she was right. We weren't pretending anymore. We didn't try to erase the awkward pauses or sand down the uncomfortable truths. If anything, we made space for them. After dinner, we moved into the living room. I sat on the couch next to Aaron, who handed me a mug of tea without comment. Dad and Mom shared the recliner, still a little awkward, still reacquainting, but together. Mom passed me a small box before I left that night. "I meant to give this to you months ago," she said, "but, well, you know." Inside was a pearl locket, the only heirloom she hadn't sold. I opened it carefully. Inside was a tiny photo, us years ago. I was maybe 12, Aaron 14. Mom's arm was around me. Dad was mid-laugh. We were all squinting into the sun, happy in the way you can only be when you don't know what's coming. Tucked inside the lid was a note in Mom's handwriting. "Some treasures can't be sold. Love, Mom." I closed the locket and held it in my hand. It was small, but it felt heavy. Not with guilt, but with meaning. That's the thing about family. It doesn't stay the same, it expands. Contracts, breaks, rebuilds. It's not about who has it figured out. It's about who sticks around while you're figuring it out together. We'll still stumble. I'll still catch myself trying to fix everything alone. Mom will still overgive. Dad will still undershare. Aaron will still carry more than he says. But now when we do, we say something. We ask. We tell the truth. One honest thing at a time. Because we've learned something. Not from the secrets, but from surviving their fallout. Real love isn't about protecting each other from pain. It's about being willing to hold it together. That night, as I drove home to my quiet apartment just 15 minutes away, I thought about how close I'd come to never knowing this version of my family, to never letting them see me cracked open, to never giving them the chance to show up for me the way I'd always tried to show up for everyone else. I looked in the rearview mirror and said it out loud just to hear it. We're not fixed, but we're real. And somehow that felt better. Family doesn't always look the way we imagine it will. Sometimes it's colder, harder, messier. Sometimes the people who raised you are the ones who taught you to stay silent out of love, out of fear, or just habit. But the most unexpected thing I've learned is this healing doesn't always come from confrontation. Sometimes it starts with a question you weren't supposed to hear, a truth someone let slip, or a pie that sat untouched while everything else unraveled. We're not perfect now, not even close, but we're honest. And that makes all the difference. Have you ever uncovered a secret in your family that changed everything, or realized the way you were raised, taught you to stay quiet when you should have spoken up? I'd love to hear your story. Leave it in the comments because you never know who might feel a little less alone after reading it. And if this journey moved you, please like, subscribe, or share this video with someone who needs to hear it. We can't choose the families we're born into, but we can choose the kind of family we become.